Hey everyone, it's Jack. So Global All-Stars ended on Friday, and I have no emotion over it, I guess. I think it was Dr. Seuss who said, "Don't cry because it happened, be happy that it's over," something like that. And that's how I feel with Global All-Stars after the crowning of the winner. Spoilers for people who haven't seen it yet. Congratulations to Alyssa Edwards, the queen from the US who won the show. I don't want to be too blasé while I'm saying all of these things because I do think Alyssa did well in the competition and she was a really great presence throughout. I rewatched my first Global video a couple times and I still think basically every point holds true. In the last video, I said that it was the Alyssa Edwards show, and yeah, that still really applies to most of the season. A critique that she's always gotten is the fact that she can kind of get away with things because she's Alyssa Edwards and anything she'll do is funny. And I don't think it was ever on full force here, but some of her placements I didn't fully agree with, while others I think were really justified. I think the two placements that really stick out for me that I think she could have been lower for are the girl group and the second design challenge. From what she was given in the second design challenge, I don't think her look was that bad, but just like the critiques that the other queens were receiving, it makes you look at the queens who were safe for the challenge, and obviously it became a pretty controversial placement. Design has never really been her strong suit in any of her seasons, and I would have loved to see Alyssa overcome this. They were great improvements to what she's presented before. Basically all of her runways were a step up from any of her runways in the past. We just didn't get that full-on redemption that I was looking for in terms of design, but other things like the makeover we did get redemption for, and I think that's great. I'm saying all of these points to say that they definitely did favor Alyssa in the competition in some ways, but it's definitely not to the point where you can't see any justification for any of her achievements in the competition. I'm seeing people online saying that she hasn't really showcased anything new from her previous seasons to now, and I definitely don't think that's true. Like I said, her runways especially have really improved from her past seasons, and like I said in my last video, I don't think Alyssa Edwards has ever really been good at Drag Race. She's a big personality and we know that she's a great dancer. That's what we've seen before. And on this season, she was able to be successful in the roast, the makeover, and the acting challenge, all challenges that she's been in the bottom for or eliminated in the past. Alyssa Edwards carrying such an iconic name is going to come under the same amounts of criticism as the same amounts of blind praise. So at least for me, I think it's really important to bring up both sides in order to kind of give a bigger perspective. Do I think at points she was saved from low or bottom placements and some negative critiques? 100%. Did she bring nothing new to the table that she hasn't shown in past seasons? Definitely not. Alyssa's win is something that I can enjoy in a vacuum or even beyond the vacuum to some extent. The storytelling around Alyssa's win is just very interesting to me. Her storyline of the season is almost being a positive bystander. She came into the season knowing her name, knowing her legacy, knowing what it probably meant to other people who she's competing with, and she was gonna act accordingly. I think she was very uplifting to everyone in the cast. Early on, she was involved in the conflict with Nelly, but I feel like over the course of the season, they either got closer or hashed it out or just kind of faded away from their end, while on the other end, the conflict with Kitty, Queen, and Nelly never really went away. Alyssa not being part of that conflict, or at least not showcased to be a part of that conflict, was at the biggest benefit possible. The attitude that Queen and Kitty had on the season towards Nelly, I am not a fan of in any way, as basically everyone else is, and I don't know if the editors were really calculating the fact that people were going to fall in love with Nelly as much as they did, but the framing of Nelly to be the most kind-hearted, pure-souled person, which it seems like she really is, being juxtaposed with Kitty and Queen constantly making comments about her, probably having every single comment they said about her put into the show, it edits Queen and Kitty down to a point where it's very hard to redeem them, and by proxy, it makes Alyssa look better and like a decent choice for the win at the end. Their framing of Nehelania and her getting to the end, of course people are gonna want her to win. I feel like they almost overdid it to that point. I wanted her to win so bad, but like everyone else, we were like, okay, if it can't be Nelly, I guess Alyssa's fine. It was a really interesting choice to see them air so much of the ugly conflict of the show, especially when it involves so many of the finalists, and when the finalist who was painted in the better light isn't really awarded at the end. It just really makes you start to think about the global editors and like, you know, what their choices were going into the show. We'll move on to the edit now, but still, congrats Alyssa. I really did enjoy her on the season. It's Alyssa Edwards, you're gonna be entertained. Some of the implications of her getting the win in the end we'll get into later, but just her herself, I am very happy that she was on the season. But coming back to the edit of the show, I don't really think it got much better after my last video. The one thing that I'm happy about is the runtime time got more consistent. I think that's great. And I can't really expect the edit to change drastically after I just randomly complain about it. Like, they're not going to go back and re-edit it. But sometimes over the course of a season, new people are picked up or more people get the hang of like what you're supposed to be doing. And I think to some extent, the edit did get a little better, but not too much. A lot of the small things were still present and they still added up, like the overuse of the sound effects, a lot of general choppiness and people teleporting, the mash of transitions, things like that. Once again, they're small things. I don't really want to criticize the editors too much, but the Drag Race edit is like my favorite thing in the world. And when you see something that's not too similar to like the US season, which is basically perfect, it's just gonna stick out like a sore thumb to at least me. The finale to me showed off some of the best parts of the editing. Like, I think the music video was edited super well and the final lip sync was also edited really well. When something's really easy to follow and you don't even think about the edit, that's when an edit is really good. Moving on though, in my last video I talked about how the non-Rue girls had to work double the amount of time to get the same praise that the Rue girls did. That didn't really change by the end of the series, but some of the non-Rue girls were at least rewarded, and that's really great. So Vanity won the talent show, Tessa and Pythia won design challenges, Nehelenio won the makeover, and Soa won the lip sync Lollapalooza. Once you lay it out like this, small cracks start to form. We're setting Soa aside because her winning the lip sync Lollapalooza was just flat out incredible. For the wins of Pythia, Nelly, and Tessa, they were all wins that they got in the competition that had nothing to do with comedy. Them winning the design challenges and the makeovers, somewhere in there is a really beautiful fact that drag can translate beyond any language. But when looking at the rest of the challenges, most of them skew towards comedy. And someone on Twitter laid out a chart of all of the winners of comedy challenges on Global and Versus the World seasons. Every single queen who has won a comedy challenge on Versus the World or Global, except for Rita Baga, has had English as their first language. I brought up in my last video how Le Grand Dame said that humor doesn't really translate in between languages. And when you look at a chart like this, I mean, it really seems like it. And of course, that's not to say that ESL queens haven't done well in comedy challenges. We've seen that so many times on this season. There's just a lack of awareness of the struggles and the successes that ESL queens can have in comedy challenges. And the current format just doesn't really set up every queen on an equal playing field. Queens aren't going to be on an equal playing field for every challenge in terms of their drag skill. Some queens are better at design, some queens are better at choreography, some queens are better at comedy. That fact is just how you get successes and highs and lows in a competition. But when it comes to the point where queens have an advantage inherently just by the language that they primarily speak, I think that's when some alarm bells should go off. This is something that they can easily learn from if they do a season 2 of Global or even going forward for Versus the World. And I do think there are other strides that production made, like I brought up in my last video, them allowing the queens to write in any language that they want. That of course helps ESL performers perform to their best potential. There's already thought there and they could push it even further to get a really successful product. Finally, coming back to Alyssa's win, let's just talk about the implications of that, I guess. The US queen winning in front of US judges with US production filmed in Colombia. It just fits all a little too well. Like I said, in a vacuum, I'm happy for Alyssa's win, but I always come back to what Miranda said about how some queens just don't have the same resources and they have to get creative and they have to fight. So them giving the win to the queen who was already the most successful coming into the competition, had the most connections, had the biggest name of anyone on the cast, it frustrates me to an extent. A beautiful end to the competition and something that everyone would have been happy with is Nehelenio winning the crown. The only non-Rue girl in the top 4, the only ESL performer in the top 4, someone who was constantly underestimated in the competition taking the crown at the end. That's a really powerful, moving story. Alyssa Edwards winning, that's cool. That kind of felt like a given. The road to get to the win for Alyssa was not properly set up, and just having the most overdog person in the competition win, when psychologically you want to root for the underdog, you want to congratulate Alyssa because she did a good job. But there's just other endings that fit better that they set up themselves. People are saying that they should replace the entire judging panel, and I don't think they should do that because, you know, the name and legacy of Rue means so much to so many of the queens. Hopefully Rue can take what was said and kind of apply it in the future. My big thing is I didn't really like Jamal on the panel. I like him as a guest judge and a choreographer a lot, but I just don't really think he added much to any of the critiques or any of the knowledge for the show. I think there's better options, T.S. Madison, Anna Locking, a ton of people. But still, please keep Jamal around as the choreographer because he does the best job. All in all, I don't love being critical of seasons in terms of just how it makes me feel, but I do like to critique seasons because I share a lot of the same frustrations that other people do. Global All-Stars did not live up to expectations by any means, and it's something that they can really easily fix for a season 2. The comedy debacle is easily the biggest thing they need to overhaul, but the format itself, bringing 12 queens from 12 different countries in, it's just so good. It was not a critical success or a fan success by any means, but I'm hoping in my heart of hearts that it was enough of a profit that they can continue to do this and just learn from their mistakes and make a better show the second time around. There still are things to enjoy about Global All-Stars. Though extremely underutilized, the cast is incredible and I'd love to see them back on another All-Stars in the future. Tessa, I don't know if you're watching, but if you are, love you girl. I'll get a video out featuring your journey very soon. Send some love to the cast because they were the bright spots of this season. Go watch their original seasons, that's a great way to support. I think that's all the thoughts that I have. They weren't really categorized extremely well, so I apologize. But still, thank you so much for watching. I want a global season 2, even though this one was kind of a disappointment. I'll see you soon with another video.